This would be controversial. I'm sowing a seed of like, here's what might be possible, here's a few resources, and here's sometimes a half-baked or bad idea, and then people scratch their heads and they solve it into being a good idea.
Hello, welcome to the Founded and Grounded podcast with me, Laura Rawlings, and business startup coach, Ollie Collard. Ollie, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Laura. I'm very relaxed, actually. I went away for the weekend, which is very relevant to Founded and Grounded, actually, because they're going to be our next guest. So it's a company called Unyoked, and basically they started over in Australia, branched out into New Zealand, now in the UK, and they do nature cabin retreats to get people back out into nature and reconnecting and thinking creatively and all of that great stuff. So
excellent. And unyoked, it's unusual to hear that. It is such a rural term, isn't it? Anyway, we will talk about this more, but judging by your face, the results look good, so they'll be happy, as are you. In terms of who we've got today then, so who is our featured entrepreneur today?
So we've got an interesting chap named Johnny Palmer, who has got multiple various different business interests. So can't list all of his businesses, but he will do a good job of explaining them all. And really blown away by how incredible all of his different visions are and interests and how they all interlink as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's start there, shall we? Let's begin by getting Johnny to tell us more about his businesses.
Good morning, Johnny. Thank you so much for coming on the Founded and Grounded show. It's an absolute pleasure to be here at Pitch Air on board your Boeing 727. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited about the chat we're going to have today.
Awesome, Johnny. So you're best described as a business adventurer and activist. You've got interests ranging from stopping river pollution, harnessing renewable power, a production company, a commercial property portfolio, a manufacturing and incubation space, a glamping business, and for good measure, a whiskey company. Can you give us a quick whistle-stop tour of all of your various business interests?
They're diverse. They're all driven by a desire for adventure, and I think that business is the best way of creating positive change in the world. So I love business and its ability to get things done. Do you want me to tell you through the different things I do?
Yeah, for the different companies, that'd be
fine.
Great.
So software, we founded Intellego during lockdown. That's a streaming platform which is still trading now, despite quite a few people in that space having faded away. Renewables, we've got Bristol's biggest off-grid power station, which we're now getting certified so we can roll those solutions out to other commercial property owners. In TV broadcast, we've got the virtual venue, and we're launching Studio 7, which is a new soundstage for TV and broadcast to serve the southwest region of the UK. In events, Pitch, which is a production company, which is I'm probably best known for, which is a pretty major operation these days. I'm in the accommodation space, Lunar Domes, look it up, which is a series of geodesic domes we have down in Kent. Hopefully going to open up a Bristol site soon, fingers crossed. And then property, lesser known part of my work, but probably where most of my income and wealth is, which is Skyline Park, the industrial estate we're on right now, and a stable block on the other side of town. And then we do some stuff in manufacturing, making flight cases and signage for live event clients. So quite a broad spectrum of activities and projects there.
Wow. And the whiskey company, because I know there's an interesting story behind that.
Yeah, whiskey company, yeah. Long version, short version, medium version?
Short version.
Short version, bought a Boeing 727, read up about 727s, guy called DB Cooper, hijacked a 727 after drinking some whiskey. And I thought, what a great story. Someone must have branded his name. They hadn't, so I trademarked DB Cooper whiskey in the UK and US, and I've now got a contract distiller out in Wales who are bottling up the DB Cooper whiskey, which there will be 1,100 bottles of and no more.
Fantastic. Well, hopefully we get to sample some of that here on Founded and Grounded.
Yeah. Well, we can do that at 10:40 in the morning. Okay.
Why not? Not? Excellent, Johnny. And in terms of these different various business interests, they may appear potentially random or unconnected, but they're really tied together by your three core values, which are disruption, growth, and sustainability. So what do these values mean to you?
Okay, so sustainability is used a lot to talk about environmental stuff. That's only one part of it. It's about being able to do what you're doing now forever. Can you run a business where you're burning fossil fuels for your energy forever? No, you can't. Can I run a business that uses solar power and stores it to heat their premises and power our operations? Yes, I can. That's sustainable. Likewise, disruption. I think that if you enter a sector which has already got established incumbent players, your opportunity to dominate is very, very low. You need to either disrupt existing sectors or find new ones, better still, create new ones. So that's a disruption piece. And what was the third one? Sustainability, disruption. Growth. If you ain't growing, you're shrinking, you're not going to last long. If you're shrinking by 1% a year, that's only going in one direction. So you've got to grow too.
And Johnny, I just want to rewind back to your childhood. You were born in Tasmania on a rural farm. Mm-hmm. How has that kind of really influenced the person that you are today?
Yeah, my upbringing in Tasmania. Beautiful place, Tasmania. Quite lonely as a child. Probably a bit sort of passively neglected, just left to my own devices a lot. Very poor. So what I learnt was money matters. Without it, it's hard to get stuff done. I also learnt, being on a farm in the middle of nowhere, that you've got to deal with what you've got in front of you. You're responsible for yourself and you can't rely on other things or other people. So you've got to be independent. And that has fundamentally informed nearly everything I do throughout my career. Independence, personal responsibility, having resources, and that money does matter a lot.
And it sounds like you've taken responsibility for your own life, and happiness and money is something that you've not struggled with because of that, because you've taken that responsibility.
Oh, well, I've tried to take responsibility. Have I struggled? I'm sure I have a lot, but I just, I put personal responsibility on me. So if things aren't going well, don't blame other people. Deal with it, Johnny. Get your act together. Learn more, build more, grow more. Whatever you got to do, sort it out and move on. So again, that gives me a resilience that enables me to deal with most stuff just by taking personal responsibility.
Love it. And we were having a tour of your Skyline Park industrial unit here in Bristol and Brislington. And I was very impressed with all of your visions for all the various interests in terms of your businesses, but also how much you care about the finer detail and the minutiae. How do you concentrate on the big picture and the finer detail?
They're the same thing. You know, if I'm talking about building up a new amazing tech incubator facility, One Skyline Park where you were earlier, come on down if you're in the area. I can't think about that strategically and creatively if I don't take a granular interest in the type of bolts we're using, and the way we cut bits of metal, what paints we're using. It all matters, because otherwise you just got a fluffy, vague vision. For me, a vision can only be full when it really gets granular on really, really minor details. In fact, it's the minor details that inform the big vision.
Love that, Johnny. Moving on slightly to... I'm really impressed with how you go from an idea to execution. So what's your blueprint from going from idea to execution?
Varies. If we take the two ones that are embryonic right now, which is probably more your audience, a lot of it's being egged on. You know, I put an idea out there like, hey guys, I thought maybe we could, get some whiskey, stick it in a bottle, put a label on it. Or another concept I'm working on right now is, hey guys, let's build a forest health spa. And then I put that out into the world, and then if it's a good one, I find that my so-called friends and family start egging me on, and they're often the ones which are worth doing. Other ones are driven by maybe a desire to disrupt, sometimes from a place of anger and frustration. For example, I don't like that we're buying oil from countries that are pretty dubious, and then using it to destroy our planet and get energy. So I'm like, basically, can I swear? I'm like, yeah, fuck you, I'm not using your fucking energy, I'm going to make my own, yeah? So it comes from a place of anger and disruption that I want to do my own things. So the origins of my projects vary quite a lot. Other ones, like commercial property, was an intense dislike of industrial landlords. I can't stand you people, I'm going to do this myself. So sometimes not from a very positive place.
But it's about taking that frustration and putting it into your own hands and making things happen. Ultimately. Yeah,
personal responsibility. I think I can do this better than you. Invariably, most of us can do things better than the person who's doing them badly. And then, just getting on with it, really.
And talk to me about some of your power solutions here at the industrial park. I know you've got an A3 EPC for an industrial unit, which is quite unheard of. So talk to us a bit about what that entails.
So an EPC is an energy performance certificate. It's basically how good is your building for energy. And an A3 is you don't get much better except maybe an A2 or an A1. They don't exist. The reason that came about was I bought this industrial facility which was borderline derelict, refitted it, and in the process it was just obvious that our energy standards need to be really high. That means good insulation, good lighting, and a massive renewable power system. So we've got this enormous solar power rig on the roof and a huge battery storage system. And I mean big. I mean, like in November, we barely use any grid power whatsoever. It's really big, really oversized. And that's given the company pitch in that property a level of financial resilience that its competitors won't have. So when others are suffering from the energy crisis, we just don't care because it doesn't affect us. Then it goes on to the point we can give away our energy to anyone who drives an electric vehicle. Plug in, have energy for free. So we go from being like small sort of fear-based thinking of like, oh my God, the energy crisis, through to being generous and being able to give away one of the most valuable commodities there are right now.
Fantastic, Johnny. Love it. And in terms of maybe an outsider looking in, I see kind of leadership, delegation and collaboration probably at the heart of all of your ventures. Can you name a number one skill in each of those areas? So that's collaboration, first of all.
Okay, collaboration. You're not that smart. None of us are. You should be employing people who are smarter than you in their respective areas, or at least have things they are better at you at. So you need to say, here's a vision, here's an idea, and get their thoughts and input. Enter that conversation with humility so that people can say, I think you're wrong, or we can do this better, or we can do it differently. But also filter that with knowing if people are just being naysaying or they're just injecting their own, negative or past traumas into a conversation. So collaboration, basically listen to people, take on board what they say, but also be damn good at filtering why they're saying what they're saying. And
leadership.
Leadership, you'd have to ask the people I work with on that. I personally think, and again, ask them, they're more qualified than me. I think having a strong vision is really important, and the energy to back it up matters a lot. And I think that certain people will gravitate towards that. And I think without that, there's no way I could do what I do at the scale that I do it.
And the art of delegation.
This would be controversial. I think when I say they, the people I work with, would say the same thing. I think that I often create a sense of what would appear to be chaos, which then people run around after and fix. What's really going on, though, is I'm sowing a seed of like, here's what might be possible, here's a few resources, and here's sometimes a half-baked or bad idea, and then people scratch their heads and they solve it into being a good idea. So that's my slightly abrasive, chaotic version of delegation.
A word about our sponsors. As a founder, cybersecurity isn't top of your priorities. Yet Alliance has identified cyber threats as one of the top 3 risks facing business globally. This is where Nova Blue comes in. Its founder, Steve Mason, was technical director with GCHQ. He was in charge of keeping the nation safe from cyber threats. He set up Nova Blue to help keep businesses safe. Nova Blue are offering Founded and Grounded listeners a free cybersecurity health check. Simply go to nova-blue.co.uk/podcast offer. Goodness me, there is so much in all of this, Ollie. Let's begin by one of the most striking things that actually I kind of stayed with me after I'd heard your initial conversation, and that's about taking responsibility. And, something that runs through as a theme through your conversation with Johnny. So deciding to do something about it. It's not enough just to leave it and be irritated about it, but actually to take responsibility, get on and do what needs to be done, which is something he's kind of done in an abundance and has been the background and the catalyst for many of his businesses. I don't think I've ever heard anyone sum it up in quite that way or with quite that sort of passion.
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away by it, to be honest, Laura. Like, he is taking, 100, 110%. Everything that happens to him, he is saying, I am responsible for this. I've got control over it. I can make it happen. I'm not looking for anyone else to take blame or excuses. I am in charge of my own destiny. And I'm just so impressed by this mentality. And obviously this has led to a lot of the successes that he's had along the way.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. And it will be something that crops up again in a later part of the conversation. One of the other things he also talked about was just how he has these ideas. He'll share them amongst friends. They will kind of egg him on. Yeah, he'll just release his ideas into the world and just see one which flies, which requires a kind of a bit of bravery, a bit of believing that you could see it through if it actually comes to. But it's always interesting when people say this. Lots of other people sit on an idea, chicken on an egg, waiting for it to hatch before it can come out. Whereas he's like, what about this? It's like all the best ideas in the pub, and then suddenly you've said it out loud and you have to do it.
Yeah, and he just puts out these ideas and see what sticks ultimately with his close network of family and friends, and ultimately he kind of manifests these ideas and actually makes them happen. And I think a lot of people, as you say, Laura, kind of sit on things, maybe talk about them to very, very close friends, and ultimately sometimes that's not going to make the idea happen, because you have to make it happen by making it real, talking about it, getting feedback. And what I love about it, he's not afraid to put out stupid ideas or what he may think is stupid, because ultimately the biggest and the boldest business ideas are often the ones that are a bit crazy.
Yeah, yes, that's very true. He also talks about delegation, employing people who are smarter than him. And I know that's something that some people struggle with delegating. And then when I've looked around a room of founders, I've realised that those who are the most successful are successfully delegating lots of tasks. But that can feel hard. It can feel like you don't have enough money. You don't know who you can delegate it to. You don't know if someone will get what you're doing. I don't know. There are lots of reasons why that can feel tough, but in a way is absolutely what's required if things are going to get off the ground, because you can't do everything.
And I think Johnny 100% trusts all of his staff that he employs. So like, he's not a micromanager. He's saying, right, this is your responsibility. You get on with it. I'll oversee it, give the strategic direction. But I 100% trust in your ability to get this job done. And when I was there at Skyline Park, there was about 20 staff on site. And I spoke to a couple of his senior people, and they were just saying how great he was to work for. They let them get on with things, and they just have that 100% trust between one another, which ultimately enables teams to build results. And I think that's why Johnny's been so successful, because he's not doing it by himself.
Yeah, because you cannot, especially with that many different businesses. I mean, yeah. On that subject, though, there is still a risk with so many different interests and a busy family life as well, that you could spread yourself too thinly. And that's one of the questions that you put to Johnny. Has he ever found himself spread too thinly?
Yeah, probably most days of the week.
Okay, love it, honestly. And how do you deal with that?
Being very concise with what really matters today, and what usually matters is health, people, relationships, and the commitments and responsibilities I've made. They have to come first. Then creative pursuits come second. As long as I always focus on that, things tend to work out well. But it's about keeping the promises and commitments to others always first. When they're okay, then I can go off and do crazy, silly, adventurous stuff.
Man of your word, and it matters, doesn't it?
Well, I try really hard, so really important to, make sure that, any commitment or even passive commitments to someone to get a project done, they need a resource, or I've got to deliver on something like some equipment or paying a bill on time or whatever. I'm really focusing hard on doing my absolute best to always deliver on my responsibilities to others.
I love that, Johnny. And in terms of all your business ventures, I'm sure there's been some failures and chaos, as you put it, along the way. Can you talk to me about a favourite failure so far, and what was the lesson that you learned from it?
It's not contrived, but I just don't think in those terms, honestly. I'm sure the people I work with would have endless lists of things, probably photos and videos to prove it. I don't think in those terms. Genuinely, I know that's such a cliche to say, I think about times that I learnt things. Yep. What's a big cock-up? I mean, the amount of materials I've broken, or things that have blown up, or relationships that have endless. It just doesn't end all the time. If I'm not having some kind of what some might call a failure every day, I'm just not learning. I mean, just today, we were talking about the size of bolts, and those bolts weren't right because it wouldn't interlock with something else. You could call that a failure, but it wasn't. I now know that an M16 bolt in that application is not the right kit for the job. So it's about condensing those failures into a way that doesn't kill anyone, doesn't lose too much money, doesn't upset too many people, and then you can learn from it. So I'm sorry that doesn't answer the question, but I really do believe that, and my brain is literally wired to not recognise the concept of failure, and I truly mean that.
How have you over the past developed that skill though? Because people aren't born with that.
Okay, so if I don't know, let's think of if I try and build a renewable power system and I short out a battery, get a face full of sparks, and a lithium-ion battery catches fire, yeah? First thing is see the funny side of it. Look at it through an outside lens of laugh at yourself, what an idiot. And then think, you know what, I didn't fail. Now I know about how to make a lithium-ion battery blow up. That's really good to know. Now I know where the dangers are, how to mitigate them, and I've got a funny story to tell my mates.
So it's not taking yourself too seriously, and also the power of reframing what you're doing.
Yeah, that does come from a place where you're making those mistakes in an environment where you're not going to hurt someone or you're not going to lose too much money. That helps a lot.
Love that. And Johnny, I'm sure you've got lots of people that you call when things aren't going to plan, and people that you rely on in terms of your support network. Mm-hmm. Who are those important people in your life?
Lots of people. So most of my friends I talk to about everything, and I encourage them to do the same, although I'm sure they get sick of hearing me talk. My wife, obviously. I get my kids' input in a lot of things. And then I've got a very broad network of mentors who are people I respect and admire, who are amazing at what they do. And I tell them that, you're, whether you like it or not, one of my unwitting mentors, and I'll be phoning you at some point. And I found that people love having their opinions asked. And the people I've got access to is just incredible. And I love it when people come to me and ask advice too. I think it's really under-recognised as a valuable thing in building a network of mentors who are amazing, who can help you out. And people do want to help you, they really do.
And for people listening who probably haven't maybe got that power or pool of mentors currently, mm-hmm. How do you start that process of developing a bank of people that you can call upon? Okay,
so assuming most of your listeners are people who start up or pre-startup, yeah? Yep. Chances are, I'm not being judgmental, the people around you are probably not the best mentors. Possibly, right? Don't look to the people down the pub for advice, okay? Unless you want to know about how to knock back more pints of beer. Look at who is the best in their sector. Ideally ones you know, and if you don't know, that's fine. So give me an example. What's one of a sector some one of your people might be into?
It could be fintech as an example.
Okay, so fintech. Who are the rock stars in that world? I mean, straight away, I think the guys that set up Stripe and the people that run Starling, right? Yep. Send them a DM. They might be really interested in talking to you. If you can't speak to them, try and get through to the head developer at a bank in your region. You might be surprised who you can get access to. And if you can't get through to them, find out who are the best coders or graphic designers or people that run network systems, and target specific people and go for them. Treat it like hunting them down. I want to be in your world. I want you as a mentor. Maybe I want to be your friend. There's nothing wrong with entering a relationship with absolute intent of what you want, and be honest about that. You might be surprised on how positive people are towards you. I would love it if some, 17-year-old said, Johnny, love what you do in this space. Could you please advise me? I'd be at 100%. Let's meet up right now. Genuinely, I would. And I think most people like me are the same.
I love that. And we were talking earlier a bit about, sectorial interest in terms of specific sectors and people meeting up. But we were talking about going a bit deeper than that and talking about connecting on a leisure and a recreational basis. And how important is friendships in business?
Well, that's a simple question, complex answer. I think that true friends, and I probably have less than 10, I'd like to think probably more than 5 true friends, don't give a shit about my business. And I don't care about their businesses. We care about each other. No matter what happens in their life, they're true friends. Those people are few and far between. If you have more than 10, that's amazing. Now, then there's the other extreme, people you just work with and it's just about work. Then there's everyone in between, which I think for me is 90% of the people in my life. Friendship and business has a significant overlap on the spectrum. And I think they're really valuable. I mean, people who are in business and we talk about business, but we don't do business together are valuable. One of my best friends is a co-founder of one of my companies. So I think it's really important to see relationships as a spectrum from pure friendship, no judgment like family level stuff, through to hardcore money business, and be mindful of where relationships are on that spectrum. And I think there's a real richness to that. This idea of work-life separation, I don't agree with, because they all interlock with each other, and they should if you're passionate about your work.
Great answer there, Johnny. And is that Dan you're referring to, your co-founder at the glamping business?
Yeah.
What would Dan say about you?
Oh, I don't know. Dan's awesome. Hope you're listening, Dan. Dan's great. Dan's an amazing creative man. Awesomely good at self-growth. What would he say about me? I don't know. Have to ask him. Maybe get him on the show. He'd be a good one, actually. Good fun, Dan is.
Cool. Well, I'll make a call after we've recorded this then, Johnny. Johnny, can you tell me about a specific moment where you've seriously doubted your own ability and how you overcame that internal struggle?
I can't think of one. And that's not egotistical or arrogant. It's just like, I just don't think like that. If I'm faced with a situation where I'm truly, for whatever reason, not able to do a thing, I'm going to reframe the thing, or I'm going to skill up. It's back to personal responsibility. And that is so deeply ingrained within me. I can't think of a situation where that's happened. Honestly, I can't.
Love the honest answer, and then I think there's a lot to say about your positive mindset then in terms of what that's made you into in terms of a successful business person.
Yeah, but there probably would have been things where I thought I'd like to do that, and then thought, well, actually, I'm probably just not the guy to do this. So move on, Johnny. You know, like I've tried coding. I'm not a good coder, but I've got a couple of guys I work with who are amazing coders. So it's a matter of reframing and I wouldn't use the word pivoting, but reframing your expectations and getting different resources within your ecosystem to deliver on what your vision is, or adjust your vision a little bit. So failure, not a thing. Sorry, can't help with that.
The first thing, Ollie, to say from this bit is Johnny is so clear in what he thinks and what he does. And so when he talked about keeping commitments to others, let's pick that out as the first thing. You know, it's that back to responsibility thing, isn't it? But it sounded as though he is very clear. He has these commitments and he sticks to them. And I don't know about you, but I mean, I have commitments, but sometimes it's hard to stick to them because I think I just need to just do this, and you'll understand, partner, because you're really lovely and you don't want to see me stressed. So you'll just say, yes, that's fine. You can run a little bit late or whatever. But I sense with him, you know, the way to make all of this work is to keep your commitments to others and have a really clear boundary on that, actually.
Yeah, I got the sense that Johnny is definitely a man of his word. So if he said something, you know, we're meeting at 7:00 for dinner, then you better be sure that you're going to be there, because he certainly is going to be. I think a lot of it probably stems back to his childhood, where he said that, you know, he grew up on this farm, being left to his own devices, not having much money. And, you know, he knows the importance of money, and ultimately he just makes things happen. So if he makes a commitment, be sure that he's going to stick to it. And I think, you know, this will transcend across his team, and it gives everyone confidence that if he says something, he's going to make it happen. And I think that enables others to play at the top of their game as well.
It's true. And it's one of those things. It also means that as well as putting in a really clear boundary, people know where to connect with you as well, because they know that if it's not at that time, then it's at this point. And I think it can speed things up in so many ways. Often we think we're being more efficient by having slightly porous boundaries and commitments that can, you know, obviously they're still important, but there might be the odd time. But it can actually make things far easier for everybody.
I think so, because there's that transparency, isn't there? So
yeah.
I think ultimately you're not going to say something if you were working for Johnny if you didn't think 100% it was going to happen, because you want to be sure that it is going to happen. So I think having that clarity is key.
Talking of things that are deeply ingrained, he said, failure, can't help with that. Again, such a clear, non-negotiable outlook on failure, which is, you know, very, very refreshing. It is only learning. I think that is stuff we all need to embrace. I mean, I'm thinking about that as I'm saying it, thinking, well, do I mean that when we're, you know, no one dies as a result of my work? Would that be different? But no, actually, if you think about, you know, airline industry, the key thing why they've been, you know, really good at reducing the numbers of accidents is that they learn from things that go wrong. So actually, definitely that is the way forward, but such clarity again on that. There are many times, Ollie, when I have learnt things. This is what Johnny said to you, didn't he?
He did, and I think it's a fantastic mentality to have, because ultimately if something goes wrong, he's just saying, well, what was the key takeaway from that? What did I learn? I'm now grateful because I know X, Y, or Z as a result of that bad thing happening. So it's just that really good reframing of that mentality to actually making sure that either he's learning something, upskilling himself, not making the same mistake twice. And I think it's so refreshing to see that mentality from Johnny, and it ultimately goes back to his, you know, his character and his values and how much he really places an emphasis on that personal responsibility.
Do you think in some ways that if you have got that sort of mindset, then it also protects you emotionally a bit from the roller coaster? If you can not take it as, oh God, I personally made this great big mistake, I did that, my decision making was wrong, you know, I lost that money, I shouldn't have hired that person. Do you see what I mean? You get all of the feelings about everywhere that you went wrong rather than going, and this is everything that I learned and everything I would do differently. It does feel differently when you say it like that, doesn't it? And there is a bit of protection from the emotional challenges of running a business by having that outlook, as well as perhaps being faster to be more successful.
And I think this is something that Johnny's inevitably learnt over time. Like, if something goes wrong, he's not thinking 30 seconds later, what did I learn from it? He probably is now, but when he started this transformational process of thinking about learnings, like you say, it does protect yourself, because you can sleep on it and say, well, actually, I'm going to remove the emotion from it. I'm going to think about this logically. What did I do wrong? I'm going to take personal responsibility for that, and this is what I learned, and this is how I'm going to do it differently next time. I think that, it's just such a great way of thinking.
Yeah, really true, especially for bouncing back. Okay, on to the final part of your conversation together. And I'm sure this is a sort of episode where people are perhaps sitting there with a pen and paper thinking, oh, that's a good point. I need to note that one down, stop and rewind. But in the final part of your conversation, you were asking him about, as is tradition, the future and looking ahead to the next 5 years and what that might hold.
Next 5 years, I don't think in cycles that long, much shorter. The next 3 months are about making damn certain that all my work in progress is completed. The TV studio, the stable block, phase 2 of Skyline Park, the incubator and the rest of it, which is a matter of months. Beyond that, I want to start bringing together all the skills and resource across all the industries I've worked together to do some really epic projects. What I've done's cool, it's great, it makes money, it's good, honest, solid businesses, but I want to do something at much, much bigger scale, which is more culturally significant next, that brings in power, events, media, property, design, everything together.
So what does success look like for you?
Success for me is complex, lots of things. My physical and mental and social and financial health have to be good. That's, to me, like a hygiene factor. Then success beyond that is having rich, engaging, inspiring interactions with people that make people laugh or smile or pull their hair out or cry. I like intense kind of interactions. Not for everyone, though. And then beyond that, it's about adventures. Doing things that scare me a bit or that reframe the way I look at the world. And then I also like to have very, very deep experiences, like deep connection with my children or times when I feel at one with nature. So, moving parts. I think that, life's a very turbulent, organic thing that's changing all the time. So there's not a specific bullet point. It's all those things all happening at once, all in different levels all the time.
Love that, Johnny. In terms of your family, you've talked about your kids there.
Yeah.
How do you manage the relationships with your family and all your business interests? How do you keep on top of keeping both successful?
In one part, I think of things as projects. Like being a good dad is a project. It's a project that requires an open heart and real connection and a lot of love, but it still is a project that requires time, investment and effort. So I'll make sure that today I'm home at 3:00, so I spend time with the kids before I go and do whatever else I'm doing tonight. Same thing with my wife. She insists every morning, for Kathy to be happy, we have to have our tea and coffee every morning. This morning that was at 5:30 because I had an early start. Other days it might be at 7. Along we do that, we reconnect, share ideas, have our chats, have our arguments, whatever. She's happy, right? And then that's the baseline. So then above that, other things I have to do. In business, it starts with fulfilling the responsibilities I've got to others and just keeping all this stuff in order, getting all that done right, then hopefully creating enough space where I can be creative and adventurous with other new projects. Does that answer the question?
It definitely did.
Yeah?
It definitely
Yeah,
did.
okay.
I like that connection time with you and your wife, and whether you're talking about goals, projects, whatever you're working on, or whether it's having an argument. So,
Well, this might be relevant to your startup crew. Like, if it's like you got to get the basics right before you kind of go off on one. I heard this phrase many years ago. The extent of your diversification needs to match the quality of your core competence. As in, get the basics right, then you can flit off. Now, being someone you probably notice is quite prone to doing lots of different things, I've got to be very disciplined on my personal responsibility to make sure those basic things in business and life are right. Otherwise, I'd be flitting around, half building loads of stuff, and that would only go one way. It would be absolute catastrophe if that's all I did. So I've got to be very disciplined.
Love that. And what are your non-negotiables?
What, with people or in life?
In life.
In life, I've got to be around good people who aren't out to sabotage each other or me. I've got to be healthy in body, mind and finance. I also, it's being on time is non-negotiable. People who are late just aren't part of my life. It sounds harsh, but it's true. Yeah, I'd say they're my non-negotiables. And living a good life, living a life that matters, because we'll all be dead soon. Got to enjoy it.
So true.
Huh?
4,000 weeks.
Is that how long we got?
On average.
Is that right? I reckon I've got about 40 years left in me. And then so it's like, how do I want to spend that time, you know? And that informs every day. If I've only got so many days left, how do I want this day to be? Is it worth doing that thing? Is it worth being with that person? How do I want to feel in my body and mind that day? That question every single day.
Love that, Johnny. A key part of the Founded and Grounded podcast is asking all of our featured founders to distill down just one piece of advice that you'd pass on to either somebody running a business or thinking of starting a business. What would that one piece of advice be, Johnny?
Okay, so someone who receives and gives a lot of mentoring, I think advice needs to be given to someone when they're ready for it, and advice is curated to the individual. So let's think general. What's a really general bit of advice that I could give to everyone? I would say that the more you know about many things, the better you get at one thing. So when people want to narrow down and focus in one profession or whatever, not so. The more diverse you are in the way you live and express and love and create is going to make you better at all of it. The more things you do, the better you get at all of them. That would be my key bit of advice.
I love that, Johnny, because there's a lot of talk out there about, for example, the one thing, which is a book by Gary Keller, who talks about obviously focusing on that one thing. But what you're saying is you want to get an overarching interest in lots of different things to make that one thing better.
Yeah, and I'll give an example that makes sense, right? Let's say you're a foot surgeon. You're the best foot surgeon in the world and you only do feet. Would you maybe be a better foot surgeon if you knew a bit about skin and kidneys and brain? Would it make you better or worse? Better. In one of my industries, event production, AV, people want to be just a sound engineer. And I say, do you think you'd be a better sound engineer if you knew a bit about video? Better or worse? The answer's always better. It's obvious. The more you know about everything, the better you are at the one thing you really want to focus your energies on.
So, Johnny, I'm sure we've got lots of listeners interested to find out more about all of your different business interests. Where can people find out a bit more about what you're doing?
Search me up. You'll find all sorts of colourful stuff. But if you want to know one in particular thing, I did a wipe last year, my 2022 wipe, which is basically a video summarising what me and the team have been up to last year. It's on YouTube. Check that out. Or just have a poke around the internet. Or if you're in Bristol, because that's where we are right now, give me a shout. I love visitors. I love showing people around. Especially I love meeting people who are setting up businesses and learning about their journeys. We've talked about me mostly here, but normally these conversations are the other way round. So I'd invite people to come on down. Come see the aeroplane.
Amazing, Johnny. Thank you for that kind invitation. And last question to finish up with. If I knew you better, what's the one question that I would have asked you?
I don't know. If you knew me better, what question would you ask me? Depends what you're into, really. Sorry, that's not helpful.
That's okay.
You know it better now than you did an hour ago, so maybe you have got a question. It's not on your list over there.
So, what are your interests outside of business?
Lots of things. I'm getting into cooking. I'm not very good at it. I like walking my dog. I like running. I like going to the gym. I love travel. All the usual cliched stuff, really.
Excellent. And I know you're going on a trip to India
yes.
later in the year. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, really exciting. One of my mentors, a guy called John Ponton, absolute legend. He's a guy, huge admiration for. He's actually, if you know Bristol, he was the guy who really made the harbour what it is now. He's a fascinating man. So he said to me, Johnny, I've got these wind turbines and I need someone to help me out with it. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, John, let's go check them out. These wind turbines in a place called Tamil Nadu near Chennai in southern India. And I'm super excited to go out there. I like that because it's travel with intent. It's not just being a tourist and being a spectator. It's like, get stuck in. I want to learn about the turbines, meet the people, see where I can add value to their operation, if at all. And then do some fun stuff along the way. You know, bit of scuba diving, bit of jungle trekking. Can't wait. Really excited about that.
Love that, Johnny. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for inviting us on your Boeing 727 and for your time and insights this morning.
Cool. Thanks for having me, and hopefully there's some value for your audience in what I've said today.
Definitely is, Johnny. Thank you very much.
So next 5 years, okay, actually next 3 months. Interesting, that sort of use of, I think he put it, looking at it in terms of shorter cycles, wanting to do something bigger scale and bringing all these things together. I would love to know what he's on about there. Did you kind of get out any extra information there, Ollie? Because I'm curious. What do you sense is in the offing?
He didn't expand too much, Laura, but when Johnny says this, it's going to be something pretty big, right, from all that he's achieved so far. And he's talking about taking it to a next level and having a global impact. So yes. I think he's got some very bold plans. And I love how he breaks things down into, shorter cycles, into quarters. And he goes 100% into that for those next 3 months. And then ultimately he's got a bigger vision about where that is going to take him along that journey.
Yeah, one of the things that helps him that he talked about is breaking things down into projects. So that might be work related, might be family related, but it's the time, the energy and the investment required. I mean, this is such a methodological next level way of looking at things. What did you make of that?
Well, I think it's incredible how he kind of decompartmentalised everything into different categories, and the way he thinks about things. He's talking about business and friendships on a spectrum, and I just think that his brain just works in a really interesting way, and he clearly separates everything out. And I think ultimately that gives him the clarity to be creative and achieve so much, because he's got this really clear way of thinking. And as you can tell from the audio, there was 0 retakes. He was literally bang, 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 so succinct with every answer. And I was just in awe of it, to be honest with you, Laura.
Yeah. I mean, I am in envy. I sort of feel like, how you get people to come and declutter your house? Yeah. Well, there are such people. Well, I love all of that. Or Dilly off of Sort Your Life Out. She'd be my kind of ideal person. But maybe Johnny in the same way. If he ever steps inside my brain, would be like, what on earth? There are plenty of learnings in here. No, I'm sure he'd be really nice. But it's like, oh, wow, okay, I feel like I can learn something here about how to think about things that could be more structured. I am not a really structured person, but he clearly is. And it was like, oh, right, okay, I need to think about what I could get from this, because it sounded very good and helps him juggle everything. And with that, being disciplined as well. Again, this is one of those things, you meet people, don't you, from time to time, who are just so disciplined. Some things are easy to do and easy not to do. Exercise is easy to do and easy not to do. But those people who have the slight edge, and that is reference to a business book, a very good business book, are those who do it. They have that discipline. And unsurprisingly, he does.
Yeah, and I think he just has this unrelenting desire to achieve. And I think it underpins everything that he does. And again, coming back to taking this personal responsibility, having this clarity of thought, which is critical to all of his business ventures, and working with people. And I love what he said about, the fact that he gives back. And, if a 17-year-old asked him for help, then he'd be there tomorrow and giving advice. And I think, because he knows the value of what he's had from some of the people around him and his mentors, he is looking to give back as well. And I think that's really refreshing to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, in terms of advice, we've got Johnny's advice there about knowing more about lots of things, which is music to my ears, because that is how my brain naturally works. So now I feel I'm on terra firma. He naturally wants to know about loads of different things. And he's right. It's surprising how many times that actually is really helpful, and also a distraction. But we'd like to talk social just for a tick and return to our previous episode with Samantha, who keeps an eye on all things community for us, and see what you've been saying in response to our previous founder's question to you. So, Sam, just give us a little reminder of who we had and what it is that they wanted to know.
In our last episode, we spoke with Varun from Magic, all about the importance of having a co-founder, someone to lean on during the lows, somebody that you can confide in and share a clear vision and share those wins with, as well as dividing up labour and expertise to really push that business forward. Varun talked about some amazing things from his startup journey, how to fund and build an MVP, and the loneliness along the journey too in his recent episode. It was a really interesting episode with so many important insights into the loneliness of entrepreneurship. Varun, like all of our guests, had a question for you, our listeners. So talking about the concept of loneliness in business, Varun wanted to know how you deal with loneliness, whether you have a co-founder or whether you're riding solo. He wanted to know how you deal with this emotional roller coaster. We had some great comments back, and of course it's such an important topic. So thank you everybody who contributed to the conversation. We had people sharing how wonderful it is to share the journey with their co-founder. And Jamie really resonated with this, sharing how important complementary skill sets is, but also the support a co-founder can bring. That great businesses are built by great teams and that you don't have to do it alone. And I think that's so important to remember. A lot of us go into business kind of feeling that pressure that we have to do it alone. We have to prove something and prove that we can do it ourselves. But actually, it's who you surround yourself with that really makes your business great. George also had thoughts on that, sharing that complementary skills are so important in a co-founder, but also your team. So it's not just about your co-founder, but all of the people you surround yourself with. You want the best people around you who plug the gaps and who are the best at what they do, shared George, which is absolutely right. So I think all in, it's who you share that journey with, your co-founder, but also the rest of your team, and how you find those little ways of kind of working together, filling those skill gaps, and also making the journey a little less lonely, whether that's through communities like here with other entrepreneurs, through co-founders, or through the teams you build. But whatever you do, it's really important to find those little ways of making the entrepreneurial journey a little less lonely. As always, if you have other thoughts, comments, or want to join in the conversation, please do come and find us on social media, where we would love to hear your thoughts on the loneliness of entrepreneurial journey and any other thoughts you had about our latest episode looking at Magic and Varun's journey into co-founder and startup.
Yeah, interesting. As ever, of course, get in touch and comment on the questions that our founders leave. But if there's anything else in the podcast that strikes you as something that needs to be mentioned, feedback, observations, anything that it makes you think about, please do share it on social, because we love to hear from you. And in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. It is great to have you with us. Take care.